you all. I think, in a sense, the premise for this this last session is we normally have sort of senior execs, but actually, what we're going through is a time of great change in the market and a time of great opportunities. And I think we've seen since the industry sort of restarted again, there's no loss of appetite for expansion and doing new things. And I think all our panelists here sort of fall into that category or involved in it. So what we want to do is perhaps pick up some of the trends we've talked about today and see how they come together. And actually, I'm going to start with Jenny, because Jenny's part of the Wingstop team, has come over and obviously looks after the tech side, which is why we didn't talk tech with Nicholas, actually.
We did not talk tech.
And obviously one of the things we talked about right at the start of the show on Emma's panel on consumers is trying to understand that digital journey. What are you seeing in the States? Is it very different to what we're seeing here in UK or internationally?
I think it's not really that different. I think most consumers now are in a place that they are cognizant to what we're doing as we take them through a digital journey. And so they know we're collecting data. They know that they are opting in, as we talked about earlier today. And I think they have an expectation that we're doing something with that data to make their experience even better, that we're tailoring it, that we're segmenting, as was mentioned earlier, that we are finding a way to use that data to curate their experience and their future experiences. And I think that's pretty much something we see as a new standard around the globe, not just in the US and not just in the UK.
So actually acquiring data from consumers is a very important part of that. Are you gaining new insights into and tracking your customers more than you've done before?
I'm sorry, I had a
Are
hard
you
time.
tracking your customers more than you've done before with the data you're now
Absolutely. I mean,
gathering?
there's obviously privacy sensitivities we have to have all around the globe, UK setting the standard, but tracking their experience, understanding how they're interacting in our social channels, how they're interacting with the different types of performance marketing that we might be engaging with them, understanding how they're engaging with their friends and their family to enjoy the brand and to see what they might want next from us.
Yeah. So let's see how technology is changing the experience here. Eve, in terms of lounges, you're CEO of that, again, a brand that's grown dramatically and obviously has changed as well. What have you seen a change in terms of what you're doing with data, well, the digital world, and how your customers have changed?
I think the most surprising thing for us is if you go into any of our lounges up and down the country, our customers range from babes in arms up to sort of 80-year-olds who are coming in for a morning coffee and a tea cake. And we have currently got to 50% app participation for ordering, which I think really surprises me because our whole culture and ethos was around going to the bar and ordering at the bar. And the fact that customer behavior has changed so substantially in the course of a year, it's quite exciting. And then I think the question that comes back to us as operators is, how do we still get those customer touch points? How do we still get that sense of community and warmth if you're not ordering from a human being? And so the nature of how we serve people is changing.
Yeah, because we heard earlier when Shadi was talking at Pizza Express about, it's not so casual, it's more bookings. Is it changing the way you interface or actually change the operational style of lounges?
And I think one of the key premise, certainly, of our lounge concept is that there are no bookings. You turn up and we're always open and always welcome. And certainly if you look at the communities we've opened in the past 6 months, places like Pontypridd, that it's not designed for a booking culture, it's designed for a walk-in culture. And so I think that's something we'll definitely maintain. Within our Cozy Club business, certainly, I think we had our biggest ever week of bookings a couple of weeks ago, ramping up to Christmas. And so, yeah, it is a big thing for us there.
Yeah. Now, obviously, one of the big things is experience. We all talked about experience. Phil Tate talked a lot about it. We're in experience economy. Escape to Freight Island is one hell of an experience in Manchester. So just in yeah, not yet. It's called COVID. I mean, anywhere. But I will be up soon because, in fact, we have family up there. So there's a promise. You put me on the spot. But in terms of the experience, how are people engaging in that? Because, in a sense, we are living in that digital world, and your clientele is not exclusively, but fairly young. Is that changing your
experience? What, sorry?
Fairly young.
You think the crowd at Freight Island is fairly young? No, I think it's quite diverse.
Right.
I think that certainly at certain times of the day, it's younger than others, but early doors is quite family orientated. And that's what we try to do. We try to segment the day and segment the week to hit certain demographics. But we don't really analyze it like that. It's more intuitive. We think like that as a group. And we know a lot of we're kind of hospitality outsiders in a way, because none of us have been in hospitality all our life. None of the core or original founders and partners. We're all from music business backgrounds, events backgrounds. Whilst I have been in hospitality for 15 years, I had 20 years in the music business before that.
Yeah.
So we just bring a lot of that experience, and there's quite a lot of... We stick to what we know. We think about what would we want to do, how would we want the experience to be, what would we be looking for at that time of day, at that time of night, on a Saturday, on a Sunday, and we try and apply those principles as much as we can to the offer.
Because obviously you have that experience in the bar industry. So how did Escape to Freight Island come about, and how are you looking to develop it?
There's a group of people with quite different ideas coming together and arguing a lot, and somehow throwing a lot of ideas up in the air, and the ones that fall down, the strongest ones, 5. And that's essentially, though, there was a core group where the concept was there's a Meanwhile space in Manchester, which is a huge warehouse space, and we had the opportunity for a short lease on that space. What would you do with it? And it's a huge, we've got 50,000 square feet, half outside, half inside. What would you do with it? We felt strongly that food markets are exciting, or street food markets are exciting, but we need to see the next stage, the next evolution in that. And that's the only thing that would really excite us to do in a space that size, and bring our entertainment experience to bear on that as well. So we had the opportunity, the space was there, we had to create something to fit the space. Is it a rollout? We don't know yet.
Right.
I think there
that
may be
was the next
opportunities.
question, so it's good. Yeah.
But we tend not to. We talk about those things, but we're not all. We speak a bit of a different language than spoken here most of this conference, to be honest. And we talk about. We're much more spontaneous. We kind of have multiple scenarios going at the same time of what the next stage is. We don't look that far ahead. It's quite. Everything we're doing is quite close and present.
Yeah. Remind us, though, perhaps the audience haven't been like me, how big is it now? I mean, what sort of size?
60,000 square foot. We've just expanded. We've put a mezzanine with an ice rink on it.
Yeah, that's pretty big. Yeah.
So I think the most covers we had, and that might be the last weekend, was 5,000 covers through on the Saturday. So, but it's a big beast, and it's requiring a lot of energy, and a lot of our energy, a lot of the staff's energy, just to keep. And it's kind of a rolling, almost like a rolling, permanent festival. That's
so
the idea.
This is constant change, because we are looking at
That's
change.
part of the model, really. Yeah. Which is challenging.
Nisha, in a sense, Mowgli is about street food. Obviously, not quite on the scale of Escape to Freight Island, but coming out of the pandemic, great brand. I mean, you're opening in London, just opened in London. What's changed in your business? Has it really changed? Are the fundamentals of Mowgli very much the same?
Because of the pandemic, you're talking about post-pandemic. I have to say that it's pretty much the same. What was quite lovely is that we mothballed quite early. Thankfully, didn't lose anybody, and we, spent a year just reassuring our teams that if we come out of this, your jobs will be there. And so, no, I think I really did sort of front-load the structure building of Mowgli 7 years ago when I built her. And so it hasn't changed that much at all. I think if anything, all that's happened is that we've grown. You've got more people to deploy to make sure we're doing the things that we wanted to do, achieve the things that we wanted to do in the business.
But I suppose what's perhaps may not have changed, but certainly sort of grown, is probably your personal exposure on TV.
Growth, did you say?
Yeah, your exposure, doing daytime TV, cookery shows. How important is that for you and the brand? Has that helped accelerate? your
Do you
rollout?
know, the growth is a different, the growth comes down to your coffers, doesn't it? And it comes down to getting those great land deals in places that you want to be. You know, it's interesting, you know, hearing Nicholas talk and that sort of analysis of where do I want to be. We do it in a different way. I go with my dog and a mother in a wheelchair and pick a city, you know, and spend time there. So it's different, but growth and my presence on TV are quite different. I think what the TV does is, you know, I'm an evangelist for curry. I'm also an evangelist for this industry.
Yeah.
You know, and careers and hospitality. I gave up an amazing career to come into this fantastic sector. And so so in my view, I think that's what TV just edifies, is it gives the food a pedigree, because that is what I do. That is, you know, my absolute passion is actually the wielding of spices, and that helps when you're opening a curry house, you know, 4 curry houses a year. But it's also representing people like me that don't come to this industry with any business knowledge or any business pedigree or ancestry, and just inspiring those entrepreneurs, that seam of entrepreneurs that are out there, to take that plunge. If they have seen a gap in the market, they have a passion that can uniquely fill it, then go for it. And so TV for me is about that. And if it incidentally helps Mowgli, that's great. If that brings people into the premises thinking there's a conscience behind the business, and I know what it sounds like, I know that it's flawed, and sometimes she winds me up, but I like her food, you know, it all helps.
Yeah, we're going to come back to entrepreneurs, and because there's a lot in this market, which is great. But one of the things we were talking about earlier is the growth of multi-channel, omni-channel, so your brand is in a number of areas. Are you looking to grow Mowgli into a broader brand in terms of grocery, retail, take-home?
At this stage, I am focused, and my passion is for building restaurants that are home from homes in cities that need them, like Preston, and just getting people to get out of the pajamas and come out in their slippers if need be and just eat out. I just want the lights back on the high street. I want that, you know, economic vigor back into the high street. So I'm not thinking of other channels just yet. Who knows? Like, one can never say no, but it's certainly not even in my peripheral vision. I can do this one thing well right now, and we are such a young brand. And there is so much growth to be had in just producing lovely restaurants in the cities that need them.
Rachel, you look after food and beverage for Westfield. Very close to here.
It is.
Right next door. We're actually part of Westfield, effectively. What are you, I mean, a couple of questions. First of all, what are you seeing in retail generally, and is Westfield different? And then let's talk about the sort of F&B operators you're looking for. So how's the market? How's Westfield?
From a food and beverage perspective, I think that we, as a landlord, fared so much better than some of the regional malls through COVID. It was a horrific time. Suddenly, you know, I talk to maybe operators once every few months, and suddenly I've got 150 food and beverage operators all wanting to speak to me in 1 week. It's not easy. But I think we've had a few failures, but overall we came out of it fairly well in terms of operator survival. In terms of the actual centres themselves and what's happened to us, I think, again, because Westfield's only 2 centres in the UK, one in West London, one in East London, you know, we are the size of a regional shopping centre in the middle of a city. And funnily enough, I think we have come out of this better than other parts of London. And there's lots of anecdotal reasons as to why that might be, but I think consumers feeling that we're creating safer spaces, clean spaces, more sanitizer than you can shake a stick at. You know, nice clean toilets, the whole facilities that you offer customers when they come to the centre. They can drive to both the shopping centres, so we've seen the use of our car parks be slightly higher since post-COVID to pre-COVID. So things like that, I think that's helped us recover. Obviously, I can't give you lots of numbers at the moment because we're in a closed period before announcements come out, but I think in terms of footfall recovery, we are still ahead of the West End in terms of the recovery. Not that that's good, but it's encouraging from our perspective, looking at our business and how we've managed to come out of it to date.
I suppose it goes back to that sort of first question about consumers. How have they changed, and has that changed your view on what sort of F&B operation you want here in Westfield?
Well, it's been really interesting sitting here this afternoon and listening to some of the other panels and people talking about experience, and for sure, 100%. the experience that you give your customers now. And somebody else mentioned earlier about hospitality, and that actually that greeting that person that's actually going to look after you in the restaurant. All of us in this room have been craving that, and so has everybody else. So I think that those things are really big influences on me. So quite often I resist the move to digital ordering. We've had lots of our operators who wanted to remove, in our food courts, for example, remove all service from the front counters. And I don't think that's what our consumers want. I think actually we want some human contact. So I think there's a balance between the mix of digital and that service point from a person, a human being. And then I think from the rest of the kind of consumer habits across the centre, obviously our local audience, everything went local. We've all talked about that this afternoon. We've started to see from Q3 our wider catchment area, our tertiary catchment area. So those for us are like people that will get in their car, drive to our shopping centres and spend the whole day there. So they'll come, they'll have coffee, they'll have lunch, and they'll probably go to the cinema and have dinner with us as well. And those customers are now starting to return, which is really important because they're obviously big spenders.
Yeah. Jenny, probably coming back to you in terms of that speed of service, not that we know how long it takes, but I'm interested in perhaps in terms of the people element as well, because one of the big problems we've got here in UK, and I don't think it's much different in the States in terms of it, is are you using technology more to actually sort of counteract that and as well automate systems? Because we hear a lot in the States, probably in real QSR, about multi-lane drive-throughs, license plate recognition, voice recognition, basically actually automating practically every part of the journey. How are you approaching that at Wingstop?
As we look at Wingstop, as Nicholas mentioned, we do have different wait times and situations in the US, but really our models around the globe offer some of the same challenges and yet some different challenges. So one thing we do look at is that guest experience. We sometimes can use technology to give the guest a fantastic experience up front. Maybe that's, we were recently testing some QR codes on our menus to let the guest explore the menu at their own pace without feeling the pressure of a queue building behind them. Or we might look at other ways. We tested technology to allow like the pickup lockers so that they could order online and pick up in store, but yet interact with the crew because the crew was helping them find their order and work with the technology. We test and learn a lot. It's one of the reasons that our technology stack is important to us. We want to have great partners, great technology that lets us deploy things quickly, talk to the consumer, really listen to how they're reacting to the experience, work with the crew, understand how they feel the experience is working for them, and then decide, is that something that works in the US market? Could it work better in one of our international markets? And ultimately make a quick decision and either deploy, or sometimes we just put things on the shelf because it's not the right time.
Eve, can we look at you again? You talked a bit about keeping service as very much fundamental to the lounge's experience. Bearing in mind we have a staff shortage globally. We've talked about it in the States, about Jenny's just talked about that. From lounge's point of view, how bad is it for you, and how are you approaching it?
So I think one of the bigger challenges for us is that we're opening a new site every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And we build them ourselves as well. So we're vertically integrated. I hire builders directly, and so I suppose we're exposed as a business both to the construction market and also to the hospitality market. I think where it's helped in a way is that, let's come back to why a lot of us are in hospitality in the first place, and it's because we're passionate about social mobility.
Yeah.
I think we're one of the only industries where you can come in with unskilled, potentially English not as a first language, and a few years later you can be a manager earning substantial amounts of money. And so I think the tactic that we're taking going forwards is we need to grow our own more. And so I think lounges is quite a good environment for that, because it's community orientated, because the sites have a diversity of day parts and customers, etc. You can come in not knowing a huge amount and upskill as you go in different ways. And so that's where we're investing more in the future, is apprenticeship schemes, is working more with communities to try and source people who aren't typically involved in the labour market. Perhaps they're returning mothers, perhaps they've got other challenges going on in their lives, but they want to come back into work. And I think that's where we can try and be an employer of choice. And because we're not, by and large, in the big cities, And I think trying to be the best employer possible up and down the country from St Ives to Scarborough, where we've opened this year, that's where we can be great.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, how we approach is a big issue. I mean, we had Kate Nichols on earlier talking about some of the political initiatives in terms of getting people into the industry. There are other initiatives as well, and we want to show you a couple now because, you know, in the room, Mark McCulloch is working with some operators in terms of creating some images for a potential national advertising campaign, which I think Loungers is certainly been in conversation with them about it. We've actually got a couple, and I think it's the first time we've shown it. One is showing it now, and perhaps look on the big screen here. A couple of treatments which Mark and his team, and he's managed to draw in some great creative minds from great agencies about how we might promote the industry. Let's have a look at what Mark and Hospitality Rising's come up with.
Who wants to grow old for a living? Grey jobs, grey suits, grey lives, life in the slow lane, tick, boring talk. Youth isn't wasted on the young, it's wasted sat behind a desk. It's wasted living slow, working old. Forget that. Live fast, work young. Young at body, young at heart. Work exciting, exhilarating, electrifying. Work lively, work thrilling, work racy. Work at the speed of rock and roll. Work in the bars, work in the coffee shops. Work in the hotels, the pubs, the restaurants. Work in the friendship economy. The industry of those who feel young and want to live young. Hospitality. Live fast, work young. You're the guy that works behind the bar. You're the girl from the restaurant. You're the dude from the club, the lass from the local. You're the one that gets the party started. You help a night out become, oh, what a night. You're the fun happen. Everyone's friend, everyone's mate. A local celebrity, a local legend.
I guess the local legend sort of chimes with what you're trying to do, Eve. Now, Mark sort of set himself up for this because he does actually want reaction from the industry. Does that sort of chime with the sort of people you want, Eve?
I mean, I love it. It's high energy. It's stop being apologetic about our industry and start being really positive about it. And, you know, I think there was a really exciting bit when Nicholas was talking about knowing yourself as a brand. And I think for all of us, that confidence we need to bring back to the table. And I see that so much on the stage today. It was Alex at lunch, our founder, was talking about Westfield, and he walked in and he was like, you know, it's been here for years, but it feels fresh and modern and exciting again. And so I think whilst we can talk about new brands, you know, later on today, I think the resurgence of other brands and the continued strength is what excites me at the moment. And people coming into the industry, whether they're working for larger brands or for independents, there's so many opportunities for them.
Nisha, how does that chime with the sort of people you want to recruit?
The advert.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. We do something called a contentment assessment in Mowgli every quarter where we speak to every single member of staff and ask them, are they happy? If not, why not? And where do they want to be and how do we get them there? And one of the things that came up more than anything, so these are all cool people. It scared the life out of me, to be honest. But, you know, one of the biggest things was sustainability that came up as, you know, one of the things that they wanted to see us do more about. Yeah. And so it's a little bit, I think we have a bit more of a sort of bohemian, I don't know, edge, or there's something about Mowgli. They come to us and they want that kind of nourishment from us. Yeah. So, and I think it's a funny thing because I think me as a founder, I'm not cool and I'm not fast living like that. It's very different, but that kind of culture permeates through. So we're kind of a quieter place, and we draw. You know, we draw a lot of people that are very into sort of the
and essentially, you're selling the brand as much, if not more, to your teams than you are to the consumer.
I'm struggling to hear.
You're selling your brand as much, if not more, to your staff than you are to the customer.
Primarily.
Yeah.
In my view, actually, primarily. So our priority is to enrich lives in the cities we go to, starting with our teams. Because if the teams are happy, you get great food, you get this incredible welcome, the bottom line will come. You know, and they then conjure up, you know, they are my hands in the face of Mowgli, so they then conjure this, you know, this atmosphere within the restaurant that the right, or whatever, it should be all things to all people, but people come for that. But it is interesting because I watch those things and sometimes I think, do I even fit? I don't even fit that mold. I'm still discovering myself, and I'm learning, you know, what Mowgli's about as well. I've got to get cooler and maybe a tattoo. Yeah.
I don't, yeah, I'm much too old for all this anyway. Justin, I mean, in a sense for you, it brings two things in, sort of people who might want to work at Escape to Frey Island, but also the entrepreneurs you want to do business with. I mean, what's your sense of the, you know, the entrepreneur flair? Because one of the things I think actually all of you, you know, sitting here, I mean, Rachel's, and we'll come on to it, is always looking out for new entrepreneurial talent. You know, you four actually represent companies or businesses which are are entrepreneurial and still growing. So from your point of view, Justin, I mean, you know, is there a spark out there? Are there people, one, wanting to work in hospitality, two, wanting to set up hospitality businesses?
Well, in Manchester, definitely. It's very, very dynamic. I can't believe how many new businesses have come onto the streets since during lockdown or off the back of lockdown, because they've gone and started their own businesses. And those in the gaps when we in Manchester, we had kind of two lockdowns, because in November we were locked down for quite a long time. And in those periods, there was another resurgence. So it's very dynamic. I think that kind of advert is good in reminding people, young people, because it was obviously directed at young people, that it is an exciting industry. And it's an exciting industry that can lead to other things as well. I think you might start in hospitality, but you can end up somewhere completely different. All that said, I think it's also refreshing because, I may be wrong, but it feels like hospitality, or the idea of working in hospitality, has a slightly negative attachment to it at the moment. That the conditions aren't great, the hours aren't great, the pay's not great. And that's something that we've accepted for a long time, and I think that's something that has to change. And it's quite, for a small business, and I refer to Freight Islands as a small business, even though it's large in scale, it's still a small business, and our other businesses are small. We're bootstrapping ourselves up all the time, so and we aspire to do exactly what you say, and we have those conversations, but we're so busy at the coalface dealing with stuff that we realise we just forgot to do that last week, or think about that again for the last month. So, but I think it's really important to not only make hospitality exciting, but to try and make it better paid. Yeah. And I agree with you that if the staff are happy, the bottom line follows. I really do agree with that. But it's so challenging, because the bottom line is being squeezed by objective circumstances at the moment. We know they're around the corner, so we're getting ready for that, because we know around the corner are some big challenges.
Yeah. I mean, Rachel, from your point of view, in terms of that, you know, churn, I mean, you can't churn that quickly, but who are the, you know, are you seeing people who really want to come through and start businesses and work with you? I know you ran a competition, was it?
We did, yeah. We ran a competition for Best New Restaurant Entrepreneur in 2018. We had a number of entrants. It was really well attended. And the winner is this lovely young lady, Mahat Kansal. And she said, I want my first restaurant to be at Westfield. And you sort of like, you have to sort of like step her back a bit. She hadn't done anything previously. She hadn't operated a restaurant. She'd never been in hospitality. But she had some amazing ideas and cooked this fantastic food. And I said, look, maybe you need to go away and maybe do some pop-ups and maybe look at trading through a market and small-time traders first of all. And so it's 2021, and she opened her first restaurant at Westfield, London, 2 weeks ago.
Cool. So,
it's very exciting to be able to work with small businesses like that, and all the lovely big ones as well. There's a few of them out there, yeah. But you need a balance of both. Yeah. You need a balance of both for our customers, yeah.
Yeah. Now, the other thing, Jenny, from your point of view, and obviously Nicholas talked about that, is you're looking for entrepreneurial partners globally as well. I mean, are you finding them out there in the international world? Because obviously you've found some here in UK.
We found
you're very
great
happy
ones
with.
Here. Yes. No, I mean, there's a lot of interest right now in continuing to see the brand develop, and we're talking to a lot of conversations, or having a lot of conversations with some really great potential partners. But and I'll pick on what our team here in the UK with Lemon Pepper. They represent entrepreneurialism, though. They are, which is one of our core values. They put the hard work into it. They're agile. They are close to their crew. They're close to their teams. They're keeping their pulse. They're listening to the guest. And those are some really great traits to see in a group who wants to build a successful business. And so, we'll take our time. As Nicholas said, we're true to who we are. Until we can find more people like that, we won't rush into anything.
Good. Now, we're coming to the end here, so I'm going to leave the last word to you, Eve. Lounge has grown dramatically over the last, okay, it's 20 years, but actually the last few years you've really gone. How are you keeping that entrepreneurial zeal, as it were, in the company?
I think it's because Alex and Jake still care deeply. You know, like, I think when I joined in December, in my first week, I was astounded at their level of detail of each site. Like, they'll know about the coffee machine in Alto Lounge, sort of thing. And, you know, they'll be here this evening, and they're still passionate and still excited about it. And I think if you get that love from what you do, that kind of, it follows through to the team as well. And I hope we never lose that. You know, I think corporate is a word in our office that's not allowed to be used, and we never want to grow up and be like that. And I think when you walk into some of our sites, it's that individuality. Like, so our teams don't wear uniforms, and they can have pink hair, and I think that attracts people as well, because they want to go somewhere they can be themselves, and I think that starts from the top.
Well, thank you all very much, and I think, you know, in a sense, you've summed it up very well. You know, still incredibly tough times ahead, and we've touched on a lot of the challenges today. But you guys are out there either doing it or nurturing the next talent as well. So thank you all very much, ladies and gentlemen, our Changemakers panel.